My cat accidentally convinced my entire neighborhood that I was stealing women's underwear. I wish I was making this up. I live alone with my orange cat, Fruity. He's the friendliest cat you'll ever meet, but he has one terrible habit. He steals things. Not food, not toys, random stuff from the neighbors. At first, it was harmless. He'd come home carrying gardening gloves, socks, oven mitts, little stuffed animals, and even someone's TV remote. Every few days, I'd walk around the neighborhood, returning whatever Fruity had decided to borrow. Then things got weird. He developed an unhealthy obsession with stealing women's underwear from clotheslines. First, I found one, then another, then 5. I honestly thought they belonged to the same house. One Saturday, I decided to deep clean the spare room where Fruity liked to sleep. The moment I moved an old storage cabinet, my jaw dropped. Hidden behind it was what looked like Fruity's personal treasure collection. There were dozens of socks, gloves, hair ties, towels, small toys, and more women's underwear than I'd ever seen in one place. Couldn't believe it. While I was standing there trying to figure out what to do, my doorbell rang. It was Emily. She had moved in across the street a few months earlier, and I'd been trying to build up the courage to ask her out. She smiled and asked if she'd accidentally had one of her packages delivered to my house. I invited her inside while I checked. Then Fruity ran into the room. He proudly dropped a pink pair of underwear at my feet. Before I could explain anything, Emily looked past me. She saw the giant pile behind the cabinet. Her smile disappeared. Emily quietly said she had just remembered something important and hurried out the front door. I stood there holding a pair of underwear in one hand while Fruity rubbed against my leg like he'd just won an award. About an hour later, 2 police officers knocked on my door. My heart almost stopped. One officer explained that several neighbors had reported missing clothing, and someone had told them they'd seen a large collection inside my house. Everything suddenly made sense. I asked the officers to come in and promised I could explain. Thankfully, my house and yard were covered with security cameras because I'd had packages stolen before. We sat down and started reviewing the recordings. 5 minutes later, one of the officers burst out laughing. There was Fruity climbing fences, squeezing through tiny gaps, grabbing underwear from clotheslines, and proudly carrying his treasures back home with his tail straight up in the air. The videos went on for weeks. Sometimes he'd fail. Sometimes he'd come back with socks instead. One clip even showed him dragging a bra across 3 backyards that was almost bigger than he was. The officers couldn't stop laughing. Later that evening, they gathered a few neighbors, explained what had really happened, and even showed them some of the footage. The whole street went from suspicious to crying with laughter. Emily walked over afterward looking completely embarrassed. She apologized for assuming the worst, and I admitted I probably should have cleaned out Fruity's secret collection a lot sooner. We ended up talking on the sidewalk for almost 2 hours. A week later, we had our first date. These days, Emily and I still laugh every time Fruity comes home carrying something that clearly doesn't belong to us. The only difference is that now every neighbor checks their clothesline before blaming the creepy single guy across the street. They blame Fruity first.